The Thermaltake Flow Ring RGB 360 TT Premium Edition sports three 120mm Ring Plus RGB fans and a glorious LED water block with native support for socket AM4 and LGA 2066. Superior cooling and a swarm of software-controlled addressable RGB LEDs make this CLC a perfect pairing for your unlocked CPU. Click the link in the description for more info. What's cracking, people? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all doing well. Today I'm taking a look at this massive display from the folks over at LG. This is model number 43UD79B, and it's freaking huge. It's giant. It's a 4K IPS display at 43 inches, actually 42.5 diagonally to be exact. And some of you might be asking the question already, why would you even need a monitor of this size? Why not just buy a TV, for example? Well, I think personally that there are some situations where you would want a TV-sized display with monitor-like capabilities, and this sort of offers the full package for someone with those needs, and we're going to be talking about all of that later today. On their product page, LG lists a couple applications such as connecting multiple devices to this monitor and being able to view them side by side with picture-in-picture or picture-by-picture functionality. That can be useful for things like coding on one system and watching your live preview of that code on another, or perhaps if you're a stock trader or you're a day trader. I know nothing about the stock market and trading stocks, but apparently there's a need for having multiple systems or multiple live monitoring screens at once. Now, no matter how physically large the screen gets, you're still going to be limited to the resolution of the panel itself, which in this case is 3840 by 2160. However, having a physically larger screen could help you see things, especially when zooming in. Let's say you're in Photoshop or you're in a 3D modeling software where you're really zeroing in on tiny little vertices. Just having physically a larger screen might be able to help you see those little bits of detail more easily. So there's a number of applications that I can think of off the top of my head right now. I'm sure you guys have your own that you can add to that list. If you have any other ideas on what you would use a 43-inch monitor for, leave them in the comments below. I'm curious to see what you guys come up with. So with this panel, you are getting native 4K at up to 60 Hertz, and we'll talk more about that in just a bit. You also get a 5 millisecond gray-to-gray response time, so potentially this might be a great panel for gaming. We'll investigate that later on. Additionally, let's talk about the hardware a bit, because we've got the monitor out here looking nice and pretty. It does feature two 10-watt speakers, and they actually sound pretty good for being a monitor, that is. Now, of course, this is a large monitor, so LG was able to fit better speakers and more hardware in here, and they sound great, actually. The bass is pretty rich and clean, again, from what you would expect from a monitor. You're more so looking at, like TV sound as opposed to monitor sound. There's no distortion, even at max volume, like no distortion whatsoever, and the sound seems fairly well balanced. It's not going to wow you, it's not going to blow you away, but it certainly could replace the need for some middle-of-the-road desktop speakers, for example. This is fitted with a matte screen, so anti-glare is really nice, especially if you're working in bright daytime environments and things like that. Additionally, you've got some pretty thin bezels. I've seen thinner, for sure, but the fact that this monitor is so huge makes the bezels look a bit thinner than they actually are. And overall, it's a very sort of minimalistic, simple-looking design. There's no aggressive features here. Even the LG branding at the bottom and the middle is very subtle and discreet. There's a nice little joystick right underneath the LG logo that actually lets you navigate the on-screen display. The OSD is very organized, very well laid out, and the joystick works very well. However, it does not compete with the included remote control. This thing is awesome. I don't know too many monitors that actually come with a remote. Of course, with the size this is, I guess it sort of warrants one, since you'll probably be sitting a bit further away from it than a typical monitor. But some really nice adjustments here. You get volume control, brightness adjustment. There's on-the-fly picture-by-picture, picture-in-picture functionality. Full screen, you can change the picture mode. There's an audio select, so even if you have multiple systems connected to this display, you can change just the audio input, which is really nice. There's game mode, which we'll talk about more later, and pretty much everything that you can do with the joystick, you can do 10 times easier with this remote, which is super handy. Taking a look at the back of the panel here, we can see the stand, which was really easy to install. It only took me about a minute or two to get it up and running. It's a very sturdy stand. There's like minimal wobble. It's very sturdy indeed. It kind of needs to be for a panel this size. I think overall this display is about 35 pounds, so it's good that that LG did not skimp on the stand. However, I would have liked to see more than just tilt functionality. The tilt is just fine, but I need my swivel. I like my swivel and I like my height adjustment. There's of course no panning either, but perhaps I've just been spoiled by all of the ASUS stands I've been using lately. I would think just for a panel this size, especially for the price tag, they'd give you a little bit more flexibility than just tilt. But some people aren't going to mind it. Of course, if it does bother you, there is a VESA mount, 200 by 200 VESA mount at the back here. You can wall mount this guy and pretty much use any mount you want. Now behind here, tucked away at the bottom, you'll find all of your I/O, including an AC power plug for powering the device and an RS-232C port, which I have never seen on a display, nor have I ever used. I did some quick Googling, and apparently it's for, it's an older interface for connecting, modems and printers to your PC. I'm not exactly sure what the application is here, primarily. I'm sure you guys will let me know in the comments, though. Additionally, we've got 4 HDMI ports. Now, 2 of these are HDMI 2.0B and can output 4K at 60 Hertz, but the other 2 are not, so you can only go up to 30 Hertz 4K with those. There's also a single display port 1.2, which can do 4K at 60 Hertz. However, you need to enable DisplayPort 1.2 functionality within the OSD. So if 60 Hertz isn't working for you for whatever reason with that plug, that's why you need to enable it using the on-screen display. Also, something to note here is that all 5 of these ports support HDCP 2.2. So that gives you full compatibility whether you're streaming 4K content from various streaming services like Amazon or Netflix, or if you're watching some Ultra HD Blu-rays, for example. Anything that's copyright protected within those standards is going to be fully supported on this display, which is nice to see. Now, one caveat of this display is that LG actually prompts you to use their specific video cables with this panel, and if you use anything else, then bad things can happen. I tried using my DisplayPort cable with this perfectly functional, freshly built system, and the video signal was cutting in and out. It was actually, the screen was going black and turning back on. There was artifacting and stuff until I switched to the included DisplayPort cable, and then everything was working just fine. But that's kind of weird. You have 5 video inputs. You would think LG would give you 5 video cables with this panel, but instead you only get 1 DisplayPort and 1 HDMI cable. So that's kind of weird. What happens if either of those go bad, or you want to connect more than 2 devices to this panel? Do you have to go to LG directly to buy more of their cables separately? I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work. I think that's sort of a strange and kind of not the best move on their part, but I digress. Additionally, we've got a single USB 3.1 Type-C port. This is great if you want to do some data transfer or some charging for your mobile device, or even sending a 4K video signal to this guy with with just a single cable. It's actually really nice, especially if you've got like a laptop or something like that that has a USB Type-C port. You can easily do so. Next to your Type-C port, you get a pair of USB 3.0 Type-A ports, one of which supports 1.5 amp quick charge, and the other does not. It's a slow charge, but can charge nonetheless. Finally, you've got a headphone audio jack 3.5mm auxiliary, and that is what's going to be switchable. So if you have some speakers or some headphones connected to that, you can use the remote within the OSD to switch your various audio inputs should you have multiple systems or devices connected to this display. On that note, let's flip this panel around one more time and talk about what it's like to actually use it. So from the information I was able to dig up online, this seems to be an 8-bit color panel with a 72% NTSC color gamut, which is, of course, far from the best that's out there. So while it's plenty good for casual media streaming on Netflix or Amazon, or even gaming, it looks really good with gaming, I would not necessarily recommend it for professional level content creation when it comes to color correction, for example, or photo editing. Now, it's worth noting that the very edges, the left and right edges of the screen, kind of have this darkened shadow running from the very top to the very bottom of them. Top and bottom not so much, but definitely on the left and right. So, for example, I'm sitting on the very right side of my monitor right now. If I move my cursor way to the left, all the way to the edge, I can barely see my cursor now. It sort of disappears under this slight shadow. I can only see maybe 20% of that cursor. However, if I move my head so that I'm looking straight at it, the cursor becomes fully visible and I can see it no problem. So this is not a defect. I looked it up. This is just a common trait of certain IPS displays, and this happens to be one of them. So it's not an issue for me personally. I haven't run into any situations so far with this monitor where I'm like, I can't read the text that's way off in the corner there or way off to the edge. Most of the time you're going to have some padding around the important stuff if it's a well-designed web page and things like that. But for some of you, it may be a larger issue, so it is worth mentioning. Quick note on Backlight Bleed. This panel does a great job of not having any. Tested this with just a black screen in the dark, and really there's just very subtle, very slight backlight bleed in the top corners of the screen, but nowhere else. It's some of the best backlight bleed that I've seen on an IPS display, so that's definitely good news. So now I'm going to quickly give you guys a demo of the picture-in-picture and picture-by-picture functionality. It's actually pretty cool. A lot of you guys are already familiar with this and how it works. I'm going to be using the remote to do all the navigating within the OSD because it's super easy. I currently have 2 systems that are hooked up to the monitor, and unfortunately I don't have 4, but you guys will get the idea. You can do 4-way split screen. Again, if you click the picture-by-picture and picture-in-picture button on the remote, it'll ask you if you want to apply the previous setting that was used. I'm going to say no because I want to show you guys the full list of options that we have here. So there's, of course, full screen. You've got 2-way split screen. There's 2 ways you can do that. You can do left and right, or you can do top and bottom. Again, assuming you only have 2 inputs. And then you can do 4-way split screen, where you have 1 screen in every quadrant. If you do 4-way split screen, you're getting 4 1080p images that are pretty much equivalent to a 21.5-inch screen. So it's kind of like having quad 21-inch monitors at full 1080p on each one. So that's kind of cool. And then we've got picture-in-picture. For those of you who are unfamiliar, picture-in-picture basically puts one system or one input completely full screen, and then the second system in a smaller window in one of the 4 corners. And you can actually put, you can designate which corner you want this smaller screen to appear in. We've got it in the bottom right, 4th quadrant right now, but you can put it in literally any screen on the display. So that's pretty cool as well. Finally, let's talk about gaming. I've got CSGO fired up right now, and I'm going to be jumping in just a moment, so all the comments will now be filled with how terrible I am at this game. I'm really bad. I'm really, really bad, so you've been warned. But gaming on this display is actually pretty good and pretty not good in certain ways. So first off, we'll talk about the good. First off, color is good for gaming. All right, response time is excellent, 5 milliseconds response time. There's a game mode that you can access either through the OSD with a joystick or your controller, which allows you to actually change the response time value. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell you what those values are, so I don't know if the fastest setting is 5 milliseconds or if the middle setting is 5 milliseconds and you can go even faster than that. I'm not sure. It's nowhere in the manual. I couldn't find anything online. Maybe I'm just not looking hard enough, but at least you get at least 5 milliseconds response time, which is plenty fast for most people. I hate this gun because I'm so slow. Yeah, it's super responsive. It's very quick. This is better than any TV that you could ever play on, at least for now. It's faster than the LG NanoCell TV I recently reviewed, and that was already fast enough for my needs. I feel like even some competitive gamers will be happy with the performance of this monitor. For an IPS, it really is quite quick. Additionally, you get, again, 4K 60 Hertz, which is going to be okay for some and super pleb and obnoxious for others. You know, 100 Hertz plus master race and all that sort of thing. 60 Hertz at 4K is fine for me, but, you know, of course, with 4K 144 Hertz displays around the corner, you might want to hold out for that if that's your thing. Unfortunately, 60 Hertz is the absolute cap for this display, so there's no, cranking it down to 1080p so you can get a faster refresh rate out of it by any means. That would have been pretty sweet, but unfortunately you can't do that. Now, some of the negatives or just other things to consider, first off, is the physical size of this monitor is, in my opinion, going to be too big to put on your desk. Any kind of desktop desk, for PCs and stuff like that, is going to be too small for this massive screen. So you're either going to have to wall mount it so it's a bit further away from you, or you're going to have to sit further away from your desk to really enjoy it, which means, good luck finding out how you're going to use the keyboard and mouse on your lap, unless you get like a Corsair lapdog or something like that. So screen size might be an issue in a more conventional desktop setting. Maybe you got to put it in the living room to really get the most out of it. Additionally, screen tearing is a huge issue. Now, for me, screen tearing is something that I never used to notice until I started testing more and more games and started hearing more about it, and now I can't ignore it. Now it's just everywhere, cannot unsee, so to speak. So if that's you, then you're going to be bothered by the fact that this has no adaptive refresh rate technology built in. And at the end of the day, if you are, say, an AMD GPU user, it might be kind of hard to justify buying this display when there are a lot of other 4K panels at around this size that do support FreeSync. And the implementation of that FreeSync is questionable among some of those Korean-based panels. However, it is there and should offer a smoother experience with an AMD GPU than this panel currently does. So to sum things up here, overall, I like this monitor. I think it's one of those products that is either going to be completely useless to those who don't need it, obviously, or is going to be a godsend to those who do. It's a very niche product, which kind of makes it very polarizing at the same time. There are certain things that work beautifully on this monitor and other things that I really wish would be changed for a future revision. But overall, guys, let me know what your opinions are on this display, if you would ever have a need for a monitor this size. Very curious to hear your thoughts down below. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to toss me a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and feel free to check out Bitwit Ultra, my ad-free early access channel, for $1.50 a month. The first 2 weeks are completely free, and you can back out any friggin' time. As always, I'm Kyle at Bitwit. Thank you all for watching. Subscribe to the channel for more tech stuff coming at you really soon, and I will see y'all in the next video.